going a little bit further with this, I was thinking, when you think about depression, I think for this generation, that term is overly used, right? It's overly used a lot. Like, this generation is dealing with is heavily medicated. Everyone heavily, you know, subscribes to being depressed or having anxiety, right? Yeah. And so it made me think, okay, so clearly let's define our depression, or in our depression, because I'm not going to claim that ain't no our depression. Let's define depression and anxiety a little bit further. So I look at it as like this: either it's situational and emotional. It's either a situational or emotional response, and or consequential.
Ooh.
And so let's unpack it. Let's unpack it. Okay, so let's start.
I've never heard that before.
Let's start with the first one.
Okay.
Situational. How can depression and anxiety be a situational and or emotional response, right? I believe it can come through fear, doubt, or grief. That's a natural human emotion, right? Those are things. These are emotions that, as human beings, those emotions alert us about different circumstances that we're going through in our lives, right? And so an example of that is the disciples, when they had doubt about their circumstances. When they was on that boat and it was Jesus was taking a nap, and they were like, wait a minute, it's a little Titanic, Jesus, wake up. They had their doubt, and the doubt about their circumstances, because they thought they were going to die. The doubt about their circumstances stirred up anxiety and fear. That was the emotional response based off that circumstance. Okay. Right? Yeah, and if you want to read more about that, that's Matthew 8:23-26. Also, my boy Job, the man who, if you want to know about depression, my boy Job went through the trenches. Okay, listen, I don't want to hear nothing about nothing after you didn't read the story about Job. So Job, after having lost all of his belongings, clearly was depressed. He had severe grief, completely stricken. Like, he lost everything, his family, his fortune. And the Bible clearly states that he was a blameless man. Like, and bro out here taking left and rights.
Taking a hit.
So, of course, what's that's going to stir up? A little depression, grief, loss, right? Yeah. And then lastly, David. Like, if you read the book of Psalms, like, David, you might have thought he was schizophrenic for women. One chapter he like, Lord, I praise you. Next chapter he like, wow, Lord. And then next chapter he like, Lord, I praise you.
Lord, I praise you. Lord, off with their head.
Right.
Step on the
Get
necks
your
of
swords.
my enemies.
Right.
I love it.
Exactly.
You start like getting real lit when you start listening to David. Like, Lord, step on all their necks. Like, you don't even got no enemies.
Right.
Like, ain't nobody after you.
But again, with depression being a response, David is crying out to the Lord in Psalms 13:1-2. He's crying out to the Lord because he's become depressed because he's been getting chased by Saul for like over 13 years. Like, he's just out here in the wilderness bouncing from cave to cave. Like, bro, like, I'm going to be depressed.
It took his life and everything.
Everything. So that's my little forte on a little samples on how clearly certain things in our lives cause depression or situational depression.